Thanks, Bruce.
Yeah, I'll see you again here.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. So yesterday I was back and forth with Shelley. We were texting back and forth, and one of the things we wanted to make sure we had here today was plenty of hand sanitizer. So she sent me this picture of our two half-empty bottles, and I thought, and she said, well, there's none here in Algona, and so I said, well, how about if Jill and I run out and we'll see if we can find some in Fort Dodge? And my wife laughed at me, and Shelley said, give it a try. And so we went out and, of course, went to several different places and complete dry runs in terms of hand sanitizer. But good news is we did find this. Would you please? Next picture. Jill didn't know I was going to do that today. And so, you know, I have to say that there is absolutely no correlation whatsoever between this run on teepee and the coronavirus. None whatsoever. It's just become one of the ways that we've acted out our anxiety and fear over things we can't control. And, you know, there's lots to be afraid of, isn't there? You've heard what Christian had to say. And I also, you heard what I had to say. Up until Friday when I got that phone call, I really thought this was a lot of smoke and mirrors, until he started sharing with me some very detailed numbers about what we're looking at and the kinds of things that are out there. And then I read Dr. Amy Shanson's post on Facebook on Friday night, and I have shared that on our Facebook page. I think you should read it. It's really a good read. It goes a little bit more into detail, but she really puts it in the context of loving the people around her. So take a look at that when you get a chance. You know, and I'm going to tell you that I'm not here to continue to propagate the fear that's already out there. In fact, quite the opposite. Do you know what the thing that is most often commanded in the Bible, do you know what that is? Do not be afraid. Isn't that something? I mean, and so I went online. I sort of knew this already, but I went online and I thought, well, let's get a count here. And I tell you, there are more counts out there than you can possibly imagine. One site says, well, there's 365 occurrences of do not be afraid, one for every day of the year. And then I saw another site that said, no, there's 366 because of leap year. And someone else said 204. You can't make this stuff up, right? 204. Someone else said something over 100. Someone else said 70, but it doesn't matter. What the count is, I just stopped. I'm not going to spend all night doing this. The thing about it is the commandment that comes in second place in terms of most often doesn't even come close to do not be afraid. There's a reason for that. Fear has a way of getting its hooks in us. It has a way of driving us so that everything that we are and everything that we do becomes fear-based. And God inspired the writers of the Bible to write about fear because he knows that that kind of thread, those kinds of hooks, need a full frontal attack. And so, oh, good, Missy, thank you. You put it up. So this is one of the expressions that's used very often in the Greek. It's me phobose. Can you say that with me? Me phobose. Ah, you're learning Greek here. Did you know you were going to do that today? Oh, Doc, you already did know this, didn't you? There we go. I want you to notice the first word is not. Do not, okay? The second word, take a look at the first three letters. Phobe, first four letters. Have you ever heard the word phobia? That's where it comes from. This phrase is all over the New Testament. It's every place. Have no fear, little flock. And by the way, this is not a suggestion. This form of that verb, this is a command. Do not be afraid. Have no fear, little flock, for it's the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Do not be afraid. You are of more value than many sparrows. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, say it with me, I will fear no evil. Verse after verse after verse after verse. Command after command after command. Story after story after story. Fear has its way of getting its hooks into us and just taking us for a ride. And God says, no. Do not be afraid. Never in my lifetime has that message been more relevant than right now. I mean, we're talking about, as Christian said, we're talking about measures that we haven't taken since World War II. I wasn't around then. Some of you, a few of you were. You're not going to be here next week. But I've not been around for that. Very few of us have that are going to be remaining in this sanctuary. All right? Do not be afraid. And it is so important that we continue to stay connected here in worship. Because in a world that peddles fear, we are the place where we will talk about life and hope and promise. We will be a citadel of light in a world of darkness. That is our job and that is our mission, and it will not stop because of this. In fact, it will intensify. Now, difference between fear and prudence. Right? And we're not going to go ahead being afraid, but we're also not going to close our eyes and pretend like this doesn't exist. So I mean that when I say don't come if you're sick. And I mean that when I say the only person that may be in the building on Sunday is a couple of techs, an accompanist, and me. That may come at some point. Right? Don't be afraid, though. We're going to take this seriously, and we're going to take it 1 week at a time, and we're going to just see how it plays itself out. Right? That's important to remember. One more thing I want to say about this. The Christian faith has always been at its best when we have been facing adversity. Always at our best. When things are going well, we get fat, sassy, and it sometimes isn't pretty the way we work and act. But when we are facing adversity, when we are facing threat, we are at our best. I thought, for instance, I mean, there's a million and one examples, but I thought about the one that came to me right away was towards the end of the first century, with the first major persecution of Christians. There was an emperor by the name of Domitian, and his mission was to bring Christianity into extinction. And so he imprisoned people, he killed people, he threatened people. He just peddled fear like nobody's business. He sent the faith underground in hopes that it would just go away. You know what happened? Faith exploded. It just went crazy. So much so that in the space of about 250 years, the faith became the dominant force in the very world that Domitian was ruling. You know why? Because in a world of fear, people are looking for messages of truth and hope and light. And they will cling to it for all they're worth. They will be drawn to it like bees on honey. And that's what happened then. Some of the finest writing, messages of hope in the New Testament, comes at the beginning of Domitian's reign. Check it out. Gospel of John, 3 letters of John, book of Revelation. And don't be scared of the book of Revelation. That is a message of unbridled hope. And you know, the same is true right now. And I will tell you candidly that I think that there's real opportunity here. As I said earlier, I'm so glad for that annual meeting, and we started this live broadcast. And by the way, welcome, folks. We're glad you're here. I hope that there are many, many more of you to come. We started this live broadcast, and you know, Imagine this. Well, let me back up here just a little bit. Last night I was preparing for this sermon, and Lutheran Church of Hope popped up on my screen, Facebook. They were doing their live service. They had nobody there except the musicians, the tech people, and the preachers, and that was it. Those were the only people that were there. The rest of the room was bare. And so I tuned in and I watched. And by the way, I put my name out there. I said, this is David Grindberg watching from Fort Dodge. And pretty soon this woman by the name of Pat says, aren't you from Morningside Lutheran in Sioux City? And I said, how did you know that? And she said, well, and she gave me her full name, what her name was at the time, and I recognized the name. And she said, well, my husband and your dad used to work together. I love your parents. And then a little later on, and so we had this conversation while church is going on. And then a little later on, yeah, you can talk. Well, I don't care. Go ahead. Just don't bring the newspaper, all right? A little later on, one of our members here at First Lutheran popped on. I said, hey, how you doing? And he said, Pastor Dave, you're worshiping tonight. And, you know, and it became a church on Facebook. It's just crazy. This is a real opportunity, folks. Think about this. So instead of coming here on Sunday, because we can't all worship in the same room, you go online, you go to Facebook, and you start a watch party. Right? And you start inviting all your Facebook friends. And some of them pop on, including someone who is in your office, or someone that you know, a friend that's far away, and you've had this conversation with them. They haven't gone to church in a long time. They're not comfortable coming into a church. But they saw that you had popped on to Facebook Live and invited them into the watch party. And so that person watches. And he hears something that clicks, that makes sense in a world of fear and uncertainty and anxiety. And the next week, that person pops on and creates his watch party and invites his. You see where this is going? And all of this because we can't get together and worship all in the same room. My friends, God has a purpose for you. And you don't know what that purpose is, but I will tell you this. He will use whatever has been made available to him. He didn't bring this stuff on us, but he will use it to spread his message of hope and light in a world of darkness. Let's sing. Here is church in a brand new way. And it fits perfectly with our sermon series for the next several weeks. It's called Signs of the New Creation, and we're going through the 7 signs in the book of John. These signs are miracles, but John doesn't call them miracles. He calls them signs because they're really pointing in a direction that Jesus is taking the world, and it's a direction that is going to turn the world upside down and inside out, so that whatever it is that we are and whatever it is that we do is going to be radically transformed by Jesus' presence, his life, his death, and his resurrection in this world. And so today's lesson is just perfect for this. This is John chapter 5. Thank you, Bruce, for reading that. Healing of the paralytic. And I want to start out by just simply saying that if you read this thing at all, this is one of those stories where Jesus finds 1,000,001 ways to do things the wrong way. All right? Hold on to that. Because there was a right way for everything. If you had some kind of physical ailment and you wanted to be healed, there were certain steps you had to follow, certain procedures you had to do, and certain places you had to be, and certain times you could do this, and certain times you couldn't do this. So if you were sick, you were supposed to go to the northernmost gate of the city. It's called the Sheep Gate. Several hundred years ago, the Sheep Gate was created as a place where they brought in the sheep and goats for sacrifice, for worship. And up there, towards that gate, is a pool. The pool is said to have magical qualities. That an angel would come every so often and would stir the water. The word is agitate, disturb. Disturbs the water. And once you saw that the water was disturbed, the first one into the bath was healed. This could happen 6 days a week. Couldn't happen on the day of rest. Got that? So the story goes, there are piles of people at this pool. They're on 5 porches is what it says, 5 landing spots around the pool, and the place is just literally littered with bodies. There are people sitting and standing and waiting and watching for that water to be disturbed, and then once the water is disturbed, it's like a teepee run at Walmart. They're all just going for it because the first one in gets healed and everyone else is left out. And everyone has bought into this system. Everyone. Including a guy who has not been able to walk for the last 38 years. Get this. Jesus says, goes to this guy in particular, walks over everybody else, goes to this guy. He's not been healed. He's so bought into this. Jesus says, do you want to be healed? And the man's answer is yes. He says, there's no one to take me and put me into the pool when the water is stirred. Everybody just kind of topples over the top of me. They're making their teepee run, and I can't get there. He's bought into it as well. And all of this happens, the name of the well is called Bethesda. It is a word that means house of mercy. It is the most unmerciful, ungraceful place I could possibly think of when only so few have an opportunity to be healed. So that's the right way. Certain ways, certain place, certain time, all those kinds of things. You had to wait for certain events to take place. And Jesus comes in and he finds 1,000,001 ways to do things the wrong way. And so he says, you know what? Forget about the pool, he tells this man. Forget about the angel and the stirring of the water. Don't worry about the teepee run. You're not going there. Just don't go there. And I don't care what day it is. Pick up your bed and walk. And you know the rest of the story. Well, after that, if you read the lesson further, what you'll find is that there are several verses where there's a whole bunch of people trying to sort this out. And most of them are pretty rankled because, they like their God in a certain way, coming to them in ways that they know and expect and can frankly control. There's a right way to do things. And Jesus has found 1,000,001 ways to do things the wrong way. And so they go to this man and they say to him, it's the Sabbath. Why are you carrying your bed around? You're not supposed to be doing that. You're supposed to be on your bed, over at the pool, not able to walk, waiting your turn to get into the waters. Why are you here and why are you walking around? Man says, I don't know. Some guy, he didn't even know it was Jesus. Jesus disappeared in the crowd after this happened. Some guy told me to get up and walk, and I did. He told me to carry my mat. He evidently didn't care what day it was. And when they finally figured out who was behind all of this, they hated him for it. They started persecuting him. He had to go underground because he'd found 1,000,001 ways to do things the wrong way. But here's the problem with the right way. The right way doesn't care if you get healed or not. It only cares about the right way. But when the sign of the new creation comes, all of that gets turned upside down and inside out. Because the one who's really in charge loves you and cares about you and will not let you continue to suffer. Let's sing. So, as many of you know, 2 weeks ago today, my mom passed away, and we had the funeral last Saturday. And you know, it's funny what happens. It's funny how you learn things about people you know all your life, and especially after they're gone. And that's what happened to me this last couple of weeks. So it was Monday after Mom died, and we had just made all the funeral arrangements. I got home that night, and was going to come to work tomorrow, the next day, and I got this text message blast with a bunch of pictures from my cousin Susan. And among them was this picture. Missy, would you please? And so I saw this picture. I had never seen this picture before. And I texted back to Susan. I said, "Is that me?" And she said, "Nope, it's me." And then she said, "This was taken in California." And I said, "Tell me more." And she said, "Well, there's a letter to go with it that your mom sent back to her parents." I said, "Shoot me the letter." So she took pictures. Missy, would you show this? A 6-page letter back to my folks. And then Susan started telling the story. And then I started reading it in Mom's own words. Missy, would you put the other picture back up, the next one? Thank you. It started with my Aunt Rose, who was 19 years old. It's 1956, and she had become pregnant, and she was not married. And let me tell you, when that happened in 1956, there was a right way to do things, including this. Rose knew that her parents, if she stayed in Sioux City, were going to make her give the baby up for adoption. So she ran away. And she didn't run to Omaha, and she didn't run to Des Moines. She ran to Anaheim, California. And when she got there, after she got settled in and found a place and all that sort of thing, she either wrote or called back. I'm going to guess she wrote in those days because, my mom's parents didn't have a lot of money, neither did Rose, I'm sure. And she said, "You know what, I'm okay. I'm going to have this baby, and I'm going to keep it." But she's 19 years old. She's barely an adult. She's still living in her teenage years. And she's all by herself in a place that's literally thousands of miles away. All because of the right way to do things. Well, when my mom got word that Rose was okay and knew where she was, she went to her folks and said, "I'm going to Anaheim." My mom was 21 years old. She bought a Greyhound bus ticket. This happened in June of 56. Does anybody know what else happened in June of 56? Congress signed the Interstate Highway Bill. There are no 4-lane highways until after June of 56. Got that? This trip took at least 3 days from Sioux City to Anaheim. Goodness knows how many bus transfers. And all of this with a woman that I know to be, from personal experience, a queen of anxiety. And as I read the letter, she wasn't any different then than she was when I knew her. In fact, she writes at one point in the letter, she said, I've never been around anybody who's having a baby before, and she was more scared than Rose was. The doctor had to take her down to the confectionery to get a cup of coffee, just to get her away from Rose for a little while, just to calm her down. But Mom went. She tamped down all that stuff because she knew that the right way was wrong. And she knew that her sister, who was being ostracized and judged and sent away and was lost and alone in a distant place, she couldn't be alone. She wouldn't let her be alone. My friends, it's a sign of the kingdom to come, the new kingdom of Jesus Christ. And he comes to you in exactly the same way. Exactly the same way. He finds you in places where you are hiding because you know you don't belong. You know the church has judged you. You know other people judge you. You can just feel it. You can feel it on your back when they look at you. And he comes there and he says, I will never let you be alone because the new kingdom is here. And right doesn't matter. Only my love for you. It is a love so great that I will even give my life. I will die, and I will be raised from that death so that not even death can separate you from me. My friends, in this time of fear and anxiety and doubt, let that be our message. And let us use this time of anxiety and fear and doubt to spread it to those who are out there in any way we can. Let's not let the hope be a secret. Let it shine. Let it shine.